Call this Washington County Board of Education meeting to order. After a brief moment of silence, we'll ask Mr. Fleener to lead us in the pledge.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on the agenda, we have some requests to address the board. Justin Sutherland.
Good evening. I had a speech prepared, but part of it's going to wing this one.
Before you, can I read this real quick? I'm supposed to. An individual speaking to the board shall address remarks to the chairman, may direct questions to individual board members or staff only upon the approval of the chairman. Each person speaking shall state his and her name, address, and subject of presentation. Remarks will be limited to 5 minutes unless time is extended by the majority vote of the board. The chairman shall have the authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who does not adhere to the above rules or chooses to be abusive to an individual board member or the board as a whole. Members of the board and the director of schools may have the privilege of asking questions of any person who addresses the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Justin Sutherland. I live in Tennessee. I'm just here to talk about the quarantine process that we have and the policy that is currently in state. I think y'all are working to change some of that, which I hope so. I don't think we should quarantine healthy kids. I mean, if they don't have symptoms, they don't have fevers, they're perfectly fine to go back to school. I don't think masks work. I think putting a mask on a child is like me putting a chain link fence around my backyard to keep the mosquitoes out. That's just my opinion. But my biggest concern is not masks. My kid has to have masks to go to school. To have in-person instruction, that is fine. I'm good with it. But they need the in-person instruction. The quarantine process, if I'm not mistaken, they just get a packet now for 10 days. That's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. My kids do not learn by busy work. They learn in front of a teacher. That's why we have teachers. Other school systems do things a little bit differently. Do y'all know what the school system in the city of Elizabethton did this week? So if their kids get exposed and they show no symptoms, their parents have the option to quarantine them or send them back to school. If they go back to school, they get a wellness check by the nurse, temperature, ask the question, do you have any symptoms? If they're good, they go to class. It's simple. Put our kids in front of our teachers. That's why we have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, next was not on the agenda, but we're adding Mr. Luke Holt.
Thank you. My name is Luke Holt, 119 Highland Hills Drive, Greg. Members of the board, Superintendent Boyd, parents and educators, and citizens of Washington County. I want to speak to you today as a father of 4 children, 3 of whom are enrolled in Washington County schools. I want to speak to you today as the husband of my children's mother, who hasn't smelled anything in 10 months since her infection with COVID in the fall. I want to speak to you as the son of a mother with high-risk pre-existing conditions, making her a risk for COVID complications. As the son of a father with pre-existing conditions, who himself is a physician in the region who serves many geriatric patients in multiple nursing homes. I speak to you as a teacher of scores of students in a neighboring district and as a member of the community. My purpose here is twofold. First, I want to encourage you to continue and expand the current mask mandate. And in lieu of that expansion, I want you to please provide regular and transparent opt-out data so we know how many students are wearing masks to give families real freedom of choice about what's best for their kids. Secondly, I want to encourage and implore parents, children, staff, everyone to voluntarily wear a mask at school and in the community regardless of any mandate. I can't argue the science of masks and how they prevent COVID, and I won't. We teach children to sneeze into their elbow. The rest should be very intuitive. First and foremost, as a father, as a husband, as a son, I want to protect my family, my children, my partner, my parents, my extended family of humanity. A community is simply a region of family, is simply an extended family of people in a region. I want to protect everyone in our community, in the schools my children attend, the nursing homes my father works in, the grocery stores we shop in, the churches we worship in. I want to help everyone stay safe, whether they agree with me or not. Most importantly for those here, I want to keep kids in school. I've taught in person, I've taught virtually, I've taught in between. In person is the only way that we can ensure that all children have the opportunity to learn. Children with special needs require intensive one-on-one instruction from educators that just can't happen virtually. Gifted children need the challenges and rigor of teachers adapting to helping them rise rather than letting them stagnate. In this time of COVID and the Delta variant mercilessly attacking our most vulnerable, in-person and masked is the only safe way for children to learn. Indeed, some children don't even have the supports of my children or anyone's here. Some children leave school to homes that are not safe, where they don't have their needs met, when they're not loved the way every child deserves. It is for these children that I know are there, those who have told me their stories, those who feel abandoned by everyone. It is for these children that my heart pours out for the most. These are truly the least among us. And I want to close with the words of someone far wiser and more influential than I could ever hope to be. Matthew 25:40. And the king will say to them in reply, Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of those least brothers of mine, you did for me. What will you do for the least among us? The immunocompromised, the disadvantaged, those unloved at home. I want to close by begging each of you and each of us to do our duty to our children, to our community, and to the love I know exists in each of our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That's all the speakers we have. Next on the list, we have with us Mr. Ansel Pressel from Strong Tower Baptist Church. I'd like for him to come up and present him with the certificate of appreciation. And also was informed that Ms. Myers was very helpful in this process. Wherever she's at, I want to thank her. On behalf of the board, we want to thank you for your support and help with backpacks. I think y'all provided 800.
Right at 900 between us and a couple of other churches.
Is there anything you want to say?
I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to serve our kids and their school system. And I know you guys have been through a lot in the last year, as has everyone. But we wanted to take an opportunity to not just talk about loving our community, but to express it and to help those that are underprivileged and don't have the opportunity that other children have. And we do that all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and it's about the gospel of his message. That's what it was all about.
Thank you so much. Okay, and next we have Dr. Flannery, who is come tonight. We wanted to recognize him in all his many years. And I think we have a gift or so for him. I know he's excited to be back. Jennifer?
I was hoping we'd wait to the end before we give it to him.
Come on up, Dr. Flannery.
I want y'all to know this is the first time I've left our property since church this past Sunday. So I don't get out much and I like it. So
You're not fishing or nothing?
every day fishing,
You
that's
said-
what I want to do.
Are you fishing at home, man?
I've got a pond at home full of catfish. I don't need to leave. This is real nice, thank you. I really don't care what time it is, but
You want to hit me this one?
You might on Sunday.
I'm out on Sunday. I'm
Yeah.
late for church.
That's your Sunday clock.
What in the world?
Jennifer's got all this worked out.
Heavens.
Read it.
What's it say?
My glasses is fogged up. Would you read?
Jason, you gotta read that.
It's a resolution by Senator Crow and Representative Tim Hicks. My glasses. A resolution to recognize Bill Flannery of Washington County Schools on the occasion of his retirement. Whereas it is fitting that the members of this General Assembly should I don't have my glasses.
Read this last one. You don't-
You want me to read that? You let it go, don't you? Be resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that we extend to Bill Flannery our heartfelt wishes for a happy and fulfilling retirement, applaud his dedication to the youth of Tennessee, and wish him much happiness and every continued success in his future endeavors.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
And,
Take this
Mom,
one.
can I have
This week, I'm not gonna make that as an exception.
If it's okay, we won't stay for this. Good night, everybody.
I ain't on where I'm at.
All right, next item of business is reorganization of the board. I'm going to open the floor for nominations for chairman.
I nominate Jason Day.
Second.
I will nomination cease.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I'd move that we just move everybody in the same position so we cease nominations across the board and approve them by acclamation.
Because I have one,
Well, you think you can...
well, I mean, but we can add it.
Okay.
I'd just like to officially nominate or put Mr. Boyd in as the
Parliamentarian.
parliamentarian,
Huh.
officially. So I want to-
Okay.
Well, let's just do one time, because I'd rather not do the RN, just because I didn't.
And he
there
made
wasn't for me
the
to.
motion and second. I missed
Mr.
it.
Masters.
I'll take vote whatever I feel.
Mr. Masters and then Mr. Flainer. All right, so we're going to roll call vote? Or you, sir?
You open it.
Yes, we are.
It's open.
Mitch is ready, I'm not tonight. You're ready, I'm not.
Ready to vote?
Mine didn't pop up. I guess I need to vote.
How do you vote?
I guess, yes, if everybody else does.
Now we won't know until it comes up.
All approved.
All approved, okay. Vice chair.
Nominate Mike Masters.
A second.
Anybody else?
Move.
Nomination cease?
Yeah.
Go to me.
Yep.
Okay. Roll call vote, Jennifer. Or however we're doing it.
It's open.
Okay, now I've got one.
All approved.
Okay, clerk to the board.
I nominate Jennifer Moore.
Second.
Got a motion second.
Move nomination ceased.
Thank you. Let's vote.
It's open. All approved.
All right, parliamentarian.
I nominate our Director Jerry Boyd.
Second.
Pete, your line. Nomination cease.
Yeah. Move nomination cease. I'm just waiting to see if somebody else wants
You was
to.
doing so good.
I didn't know if he kicked me under the shin here. I didn't know if he wanted it or not.
It's open.
I didn't do that.
You did good.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin.
Mr. Irvin.
I'm
Your
trying.
turn.
All approved.
All right, Federal Relations Network representative currently is Chad Fleener.
Mr. Buchanan, would you accept the nomination to be? I didn't do nothing with it, so.
I'll second that.
We're saying we need somebody better.
It pays an extra $1 a month, but I'd rather somebody else do it.
All right, I can't.
All right, so we got Mr. Fleener motion, Mr. Meister second.
I see. I move to cease nomination.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
All right, let's vote.
It's open.
You're sending me to
I thought I did.
Washington D.C., right?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Ain't busy.
It was Tcap.
I'll take care.
All approved.
And the last one is Tennessee Legislative Network, currently is David Hammonds. He's not here.
I'd like to nominate Mary Beth Dillinger.
Okay,
I second.
okay,
Move nomination to cease.
okay. Let's vote.
Does this mean I'm gonna have to drive to Nashville?
No.
Tomorrow,
It
Mary Beth.
doesn't.
Tomorrow.
You got
You
that
can-
next
you can
week.
pick up
Going to
the phone
Washington,
and-
one going to Nashville.
And email. I'll drive her now.
Not working.
I'm on
How do you vote,
Just
Mr.
one
Rich?
of the
Yes.
ones. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, non-profit.
All approved.
Okay, now, before we do consideration, we need to do these changes, correct?
Before you approve the agenda.
Okay, so I wanna, I assume put this in a motion, to be proper. I wanna add South Central gym floor replacement to the agenda. And also Lexi Learning Systems, digital resources for Westview and Grandview. And I want to take off number 2 under C, which is school nutrition, request to bid out kitchen equipment for Daniel Boone High School, Fall Ranch, Grandview, Ridgeview, and Sulphur Springs. And I want to take off CTE program updates, and I want to pull off strategic plan approval and put on another meeting.
Where were you at, Mitch? Where were you adding the two,
Can I
your two
second that?
things?
I really don't think it requires a
Have
motion
second? Okay.
because you haven't approved the agenda yet.
So whenever we approve the agenda, they'll be there.
Gotcha.
Mitch, we can
Where were,
put,
under facilities?
we can put those 2 under facilities, that'd be good. Yes, sir.
What is the reason of the taking off the kitchen equipment?
I think some people wanted to explore some other options before we put that to bed.
What is the other options? I thought that's what we done the other night.
Financial.
No, I was thinking.
We don't know all
facilities
options
on it.
yet.
I think, well, it's not.
I mean, somebody's got something up their sleeve, so what's going on?
I don't think he has anything up their sleeve. I think they want to, look at some other options before we spend all that money on dietary.
I'd put it under, before, right where strategic.
I mean, we'll bring it
where the
back.
Strategic plan was.
That's it. We'll do
It needs to
tonight.
be fixed now. That is the whole reason.
I'll move that we accept the agenda. I mean, I don't know if we need a motion, but I mean, if somebody wants to take something off the agenda, then.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a motion
Right.
because you haven't approved the agenda.
But then I'd like to make a motion, we approve the agenda as it has been restated.
But we voted the other night to put it on the agenda.
Well, let's get a motion on the floor to discuss.
Second. We'll discuss it.
Okay.
Well, let's vote, and if it don't pass, we'll,
Now, so what are you saying, Keith? I mean,
Well, I'm saying that we voted the other night to add it to the agenda. And now we're taking it off. Now I want to know why we're taking it off. That's what I want to know.
I guess.
Why are we taking it off?
My answer would be respectfully, because some board members would like to take it off and rediscuss it. I don't feel like it's my place to,
Well, we
if-
voted the other night to put it on to fix the kitchen stuff. And now we're not.
All we're doing is postponing.
I still have a problem with some of the numbers they're not
they're not hard numbers. They're liquid, like they're moving. And I don't like to just go ahead and approve something if I don't have a hard number.
The hard numbers is when we get it bidded out and we find out what it's gonna cost to do it. That's the hard number, when we're sending it to bid, right?
It is a request to permission to bid, yes.
So,
All I can do is,
Make a motion, I'd like to call for the question.
let's call for the question. Either it passes or it don't. That's the fairest way to do it.
Voting is open. It carries with Irvin voting no.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we need a motion for, let's see, well, that was to consider at the meeting, is it? Approval of minutes.
Yes.
Need a motion for the approval of minutes.
So moved. Second.
It's open.
All right,
It carries, Irvin voting no.
okay, announcements. Mr. Boyd.
Just the one announcement, just a reminder, the TSBA Fall District meeting has been converted to a virtual meeting, and we will have it available here in the boardroom live at 5 p.m.
All right, thank you. And then we'll go into the director's report.
Just first item, just enrollment numbers that try to put in front of you, at least monthly. Currently, our total enrollment's 8,292. So, you know, pretty stable enrollment the first 4 weeks of school. If there's no questions, I'll go on to the next. The rest of them are just field trip reports. There are none. Financials for your review and for the public record and for your full awareness. Grant reports, just a monthly update of any grants that Mrs. McKinney has pursued or has secured or is managing. That spreadsheet lists all of the grants that are currently being managed or pursued. Then the next item is just the data from our maintenance management system, just to see the various work orders by site, by category, for your information. And then also the next item, personnel report, just a monthly activity log of all the personnel activity for the month prior to the meeting. Let's see. And then other, there was an item, is there an other I was going to include? But maybe we covered that.
You were about the long range RFP.
Oh, yes, just an update on the long-range facilities plan. We have, we're advertising it and have a timeline. I'll send that timeline to you. The goal will be for a decision to be made at the November regular board meeting. The other goal in the timeline you'll see is at our workshop that's scheduled for October, is where the competing providers will come and be essentially interviewed by board members.
The HEW
Sure.
today?
Yes, the HEW report, we just had the two items that were went in front of the HEW committee, the HUE committee. One was the request of funding contingent upon approval of the ESSER 3.0 application, which we still have not received final approval, even though we did receive a high level of confidence that it was going to be approved. We just don't have anything in writing and confirmed. But the HUE committee voted to move it forward to the budget committee, contingent upon the approval of the ESSER 3 application. And then the second item was the LED project. They approved that to move forward to the budget committee as well. And just an update on that, it did go through a third-party review of the Energy Efficient School Initiative Technical Advisory Council, and our application was approved. I just got a notice not too long ago. And so the final loan documents will be sent to us for the budget committee's review. And that's, Mr. Chair, that's all the updates.
Okay. So any consideration of the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Did we pull the strategic plan off that? That was supposed to be.
That's in the discussion items.
That was one that was supposed to come off. We can deal with that.
Yes, sir. Yes. Sorry.
But now some of this is already, I guess it was, okay.
Yeah, so I can pull it. I can pull it out.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I don't have
Won't
it.
let you? Okay. How do you vote?
Yeah.
Huh?
All right, approved. Okay. So next on the list is items to be declared surplus, sold on gov deals.
Yeah, well, that's.
No, that was under
Oh,
the
that's
consent
it.
agenda.
Okay.
We're at item 10.
So we're moving to discussion. All right, update on Boones Creek Elementary Playground.
I'll ask Dr. Adams to come up and give the update.
While he's coming up, were these numbers, enrollment numbers that,
Yesterday.
Yeah.
And they haven't changed, of course, today.
right.
They're the same numbers.
Mr. Patrick, myself, and Ms. McKinney met with the PTO board of Boones Creek Elementary. Mr. Christian was the admin rep for that meeting. Basically, the plan was for us to kind of get an idea of where the actual plan stands. I know you all are aware that the Hatleys had bought a bunch of equipment that when it was delivered, it turned out to be non-ADA compliant, and estimates were about $300,000 to bring that material, that equipment up to ADA compliance. We have earmarked $150,000 for a playground at Boones Creek Elementary in our ESSER 2 dollars. And right now what they're requesting, they're going to work with a gentleman named Jake Peterman of Great Southern Recreation, who came up with the initial design for the playground. They're going to work with him, and they're requesting to come to the September 21st board workshop so they can have a presentation ready for you that will detail exactly what equipment they're wanting to purchase, how much money it's going to cost overall, and with some ideas from their side as a PTO, what they can do to raise funds to meet the difference between the $150,000 out of the ESSER funds. They are stressed in that they are having very little success in the way of getting donations to their PTA, especially during the COVID time that we're in. They're having a hard time soliciting donations. They've not really been able to do the door-to-door selling or the cookie dough and all that kind of stuff. I left them with some directions to figure out how they're going to raise some money. I will tell you, they are anticipating having to ask this school board for some additional funds. They're ballparking this right now at about $250,000, and while they are willing to do their fair share, they are more more concerned that their students will be on year 3 next year without any type of playground equipment to play on. In the meantime, they are going to try to get donated some standalone type activities for the students to do at recess, anything that's not basically foundationally in the ground, something to be moved. They're talking about getting some basketball goals and things like that. They're going to work with the administration there. So bottom line, what they're asking to do is to be able to present on the 21st of this month an organized, detailed plan for how they want to move forward with the board's help and to making the playground come to fruition at the school.
Who was that you mentioned again, that company? What was the name?
Great Southern Recreation.
Great Southern.
It's a playground, it's a school playground company. They do things like that. There's not very many around here. So,
Thank you.
Ms. Meredith?
Hearing what you were saying about them maybe coming to the board and asking for additional funding over and above this, have y'all talked about doing this in phases? You know, maybe even over a period of years?
That's one of the ideas. Their overall plan, they have identified, I think, 4 areas where they would like to put a playground structure in each one of those areas for the different grade levels, because, you know, a kindergartner will play on something different than a 6th or 7th grader. That's a possibility. I don't think they're taking anything off the table. They were very descriptive to us in saying that they know of people who have come to tour the school from other school systems, that they want to go to school there, and then when they notice there's not a playground, they say, well, why am I going to bring my 1st grader to this school and there's nothing for him to play on and go somewhere else? So, you know, they're very, you know, they really want to get this taken care of. And I assured them, hopefully not speaking for you guys, but that the school board's also additionally just as invested in interest in getting this done. But we, as a school board, they need a solid plan. And so that's what they're working on right now. I really told them, don't come with wishes and, hey, I think this. Come with a plan with numbers and drawings, details, and ready to answer questions. So I believe the Peterman gentleman is going to come with them to that workshop, so he'll also be able to answer any questions you all may have of him as a school board.
Are we in a position to, maybe we already have it in our budget somewhere, I'm sure the folks that are designing it, is there any fee associated with this that we need to be prepared
I don't think that
it's
it's gotten that far. He took some aerial shots of the school from you know, like Google Maps or whatever, and he just like roughed in some you know, like a copy from one program and pasted it here, said this was what this would look like there. It's not gotten down to the actual dimensions and foundational roots of that yet, but I think that would be the next step upon approval.
Thank you.
Well,
So do you know they've contacted and already started the process, correct?
The gentleman, from what I understand, gave them just a ballpark figure. If you buy all these pieces of equipment and we install it, it's probably going to be, he said, around $250,000, but he didn't put like, that's the top level, said around that. So, you know, things like that, I would say you probably go 20, 30,000 one way or the other.
Did anybody ask about him doing it in phases?
That I honestly don't know. He wasn't at this meeting. This was the guy when before the school was even opened, he was planning the playground structures. And then we got sidetracked with the Chinese equipment.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you. Well, we'll just wait till the end. It ain't gonna matter. Okay, next on the agenda is COVID update.
Just to leave us on the agenda, just to provide any updates. It does change quite often. One update, and the gentleman earlier called out a request for more transparency around the opt-out. Updated that information today. If there are any changes, and still the total percentage for the school district for the opt-out forms received is 25.3%. The high is Daniel Boone High School at 36%, and the low is let's is, no, it's Asbury, 14.4, that's a small number, but it's 14.4%. The next lowest is Boones Creek Elementary School with 19.4%. Yeah,
That hadn't really changed a whole lot since that Tuesday we met, because it was 23.7
Right.
then, so that's only, what, 1.5%?
It hadn't changed a whole lot in that time period.
All right, and then COVID-related sick leave?
Yes,
What's next?
that's just certainly a discussion and consideration that's been discussed and requested to look at. Looking at some options that, as examples that have been done in other districts. This one was provided to me as an example and modified it as I shared with you, and it's in BOE Connect. The modification specific to Washington County is in red. Essentially, the modification would be that it would be, the approach would look something like the sick bank that we have in place, somewhat, not exactly, but the concept is that it would be recovery of paid sick leave due to COVID. And the board would decide how many days that an employee that would have a verified absence due to COVID, how many days the board would want to allocate.
Mr. Flainer?
I like this. Matter of fact, if you're ready to entertain it, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for this temporary COVID leave bank creation for the 21-22 school year, and put 5 days for the full-time employees and 5 days for the part-time employee at this time.
Can we get a second for discussion?
A second.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Riddle, you got a look in your eyes.
So would that cover both quarantine and actual COVID positive? Or how's that?
No, the period, it would be 10 days at least, up to 14. And I guess if it's an in-home exposure, it could be longer. But 10 days is the typical isolation and quarantine time.
But that covers both your isolation, if you're out for isolation and or a positive test. That both are covered under this policy. Is that correct?
If you don't have symptoms, you can return after that one time. But that's the 10-day, according to the Tennessee Department of Health return to school program.
Not that anybody would, but somebody would take advantage of just.
It's made to keep that from happening. I mean, this is pretty nice, and I think we've taken this from. I read this somewhere that we took this away from other counties that have pulled this out. Well, matter of fact, Scott Minnick came up with this from Hamlin County, and this is, you actually take your own sick time, and then you apply for this recovery of your sick time to be, so there's a couple of steps that have to go through to make sure that you hopefully aren't taking advantage of the system.
You have there's three criteria you've got to.
How many days did Hamilton County allow though?
Well, people are doing different days, so he didn't actually say how many days.
You suggested how many?
I said 5.
Do you think 5's enough?
Well, it's $61,000 for everybody to take 1 day on average. Yeah.
That's the calculated cost per day, and that's for everybody.
Yeah.
Of what?
And so if everybody took 5, like we're putting in this, it'd be 600 or
Over the whole year.
310,000.
Over the whole year.
Yeah, 305,000. So.
Yeah, I included the per day cost that was calculated, so whatever the board decided, you can calculate what the expenditure would be if everyone did utilize that many days.
But all they get is 5.
Well, according to the motion.
Not 5 twice, just 5 once.
5 in addition to their available sick days. It would just be some relief
Yeah.
to using their accumulated sick leave.
Mr. Manager.
I guess I've got two questions. If they're quarantined with this, will they affect? Or is this only affect if they're sick?
No, it's really discussing if they've been excluded. If they're sick, they need to take sick days. You know, if they actually have COVID and they're sick, but there's following the protocols or exposures, they could be sent home and be quarantined and not isolated because they actually have COVID.
Okay. Got it. My other question is, if we discuss our quarantine protocol and change it around, I guess my thought would be we may need to increase this number based upon our discussion of it.
That's what I was concerned about. But now, this could be a good start.
Oh, yes,
And then
yes, I
if we-
agree with
Yeah,
you.
and then if we see that it's gonna be necessary, we can add more. But add this, start with this. Is that
I know
what you're?
hypothetically, we're talking the numbers, but the numbers are 661,000
I
for everybody
know,
taking
I
one.
know.
So really, you're putting 305,000 in this sick COVID-19 sick leave recovery bank.
Right.
You have to put the whole, or should be thinking you're going to have to use that 100 or 305,000. If you go the full 10 days, that's 610,000. That's that's a lot of money to put in that bank. Hopefully we won't use it, but hopefully we won't use the 305. Let's see what that does and see.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is to start and then see. I mean,
No.
it could be, who knows what it's gonna be in another month, but.
So my question is would this cover a full isolation or quarantine? Because if you're looking, if they can return at day 7, correct? If they have no symptoms.
They can return on the 8th day if they, after the 5th day, get a test.
Right.
And they're
So I just wondered where you got your 5 from. Did you just half it, what they sent us, or is that what you
It
did?
was 305 versus 610.
Okay.
Now, my question is, do we have 610 to put in this COVID bank?
Well, we could use the rest for money.
Can we?
That's a Brad question.
I just like the number 7 better.
Brad, answer that.
Brad certainly can. He's
Well, I mean,
and Mr. Whitaker as well.
yeah, I mean, certainly if
It's got to be evident.
Mr. Boyd would direct us to reallocate, it's not like you have an additional 610 we don't have, it would be reallocating some of the money that's already there in this. So-
Yes, so the answer to the earlier question about the example from Hamilton County, 7 days is what they allocated. But we are, in talking with Mr. Whitaker and Mr. Hale, we would look at utilizing ESSER 1.0 money. What has not already been dedicated, it would not cover all of the 600,000. So, and if we were to go to more, to the 600,000 mark, then we'd have to look at ESSER 2.0 money and maybe reprioritize some expenditures.
I have already been contacted by some teachers and other employees that have worked less than 2 or 3 years, and just a quarantine has pretty much wiped them out on their sick days, and they're going to end up having to come out of their own pocket to pay for that. And I don't know if 5 is enough.
I'd like to amend Chad's motion to 7.
I second.
Okay, any more questions, Mr. Riddle?
So, in qualifying for the sick leave, if the employee's unvaccinated, it says they have to undergo weekly COVID-19 testing, provide proof. Is that weekly indefinitely, or just while they're out sick? What's the protocol for weekly testing?
With that model, and that can be adjusted, that was taken straight from their model. I think it's intended they commit to getting a weekly test if they're unvaccinated.
But they can only apply for 7 days per person. Is that what I understand?
That's the maximum amount, and that's why I wanted Mr. Hale to provide that per day cost, so that the board would know what the different amounts would be.
All right, we good? Any more questions?
You probably want to amend that to take off bullet 2, because I don't know if you want your unvaccinated to go through a weekly test schedule.
That's just like a every week indefinitely, the way I read it.
Yeah, and I don't like that.
Yeah, that was just taking that model provided to us.
All right, so we're gonna amend the amended, or we're gonna back off and start again?
I was going to suggest that there's still some questions about it. I mean, it's something you're going to add after the fact anyway, to defer it, bring it back next month, and get all your questions answered, and make sure the policy's how you want it to say.
Will we make this retroactive back to the first of the year?
Yes, that's what was stated, that it would go back to July 1st, or there, which would cover everyone that was an employee for this school year.
So do we want to withdraw our motions and move it to workshop? Is that what you're suggesting, me?
That's my suggestion, but you've got a motion on the floor
Yeah.
on the amendment to the.
Y'all's motion, whatever you say.
I'll make a motion on the table, or we postpone it till.
So you're amending Ms. Buchanan's
Well-
motion.
With a table.
Okay.
He loves the table.
He does love a table.
I'll table it till.
I'll
our
second his
workshop.
table.
Can't table it to.
We'll discuss it our next,
Postpone. to our-
Postpone.
Postpone.
till
to
24th.
To our next meeting,
Our next-
we'll have to discuss it in the workshop.
Table it to the
He postponed.
Okay.
That's
The
what it
table's
is.
full.
Table's full, postponed. All right,
Who seconds that?
Mr. Irvin. Need to vote on that?
Yep.
Vote on that table.
Voting is open.
I ain't got nothing, sis.
How do you vote, Mr. Irvin?
Vote yes to table.
Is your
Mr.
following?
Day?
Yes. Well, yeah, I got it now.
You, okay.
Did you get follow the leader again up there in the top left? That's what I had to do.
It carries. Dellinger voting no.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Okay.
If I may have one more, just a notification or an update for the board. We have, moving forward and knowing that we will have students, individual students that will possibly be quarantined or isolated. If they're quarantined and they're at home, we work to just provide some general guidelines about how we would support them. And even if we got to a point where we applied for a waiver, now there seems to be a requirement per the commissioner. If we get to a point we need to quarantine a whole classroom, multiple classrooms, or up to a school, then we would have to apply for a waiver. But we put together just guidelines, and we've asked all of our schools to provide and post on their website by tomorrow, using this template that's in front of you about how individual quarantine cases will be managed as far as supporting remote, resources, using resources to support remote learners, also at the classroom quarantine level and the school. So all of our schools will be posting their plan per this template by tomorrow afternoon. And then on that, the final note too, we're implementing our mass communication system. Everything's in place, and the plan is for tomorrow for me to initiate a call to all staff and parents to introduce the service and also update them and remind them that September 7th is the day that we return. There's been calls, apparently rumors, that we're not returning on September 7th. That as far as I know, we are, unless the board has another plan.
So will it be a recording of your voice that goes out?
Yes. Yeah, I prefer, instead of the robocall voice, I always think it's better if it's an actual live voice.
David Crockett High Schools is creepy.
So yes, I'll record the call and initiate it. The teams, got everything ready. I don't have to do a whole lot of problem solving. I just need to record the call and schedule it and send it.
Okay. Perfect.
If we're gonna, are we gonna leave the quarantine like we've got it? or now's would be the time to discuss that, correct?
There was a big catch-all on COVID updates if the board wants to discuss, but yes, sir.
Let's do it.
So what is, are we wanting to, how are we wanting to do that? Because we've got a whole lot more quarantine than what we have actual tested positive. But, you know, our quarantine's what seems to be catching our tail. Well, I'm just wanting to talk about this, but I mean, a lot of people feel like they shouldn't have to quarantine if they're not sick, if they're not showing symptoms, and they've been wearing a mask like we've asked them to do. Now, of course, there's opt-out. People can opt out and not wear a mask, but if the people that are wearing a mask, they are, you know, doing what we're asking to do, I mean, I don't know that we're far-fetched from saying if you're wearing a mask and doing what we're asking you to do, that you shouldn't have to quarantine unless you are showing symptoms. I don't know, is that too much to ask?
You want to put that in motion?
I'd like to know what Kelly
Yeah.
Wagner
I mean-
thinks about that.
Mr. Boyd, didn't you have possibly an amended plan for us?
Well, that was the only option in discussing with Mrs. Wagner was, you know, we really believe if we're going to follow the Department of Health protocols, there's a few things that might be reasonable, but we still would be varying from the Department of Health protocols. And Ms. Wagner, you can jump in anytime you want, but what our discussion was, in looking at, Monday there was an amendment, or I guess a revision from the Department of Health to clarify, previously in the exemptions were, you know, you're exempt from a close contact, a positive case, and exempt from quarantine if you were vaccinated. If you had COVID and recovered and no longer have symptoms in the past 90 days. And then the third exemption was if you're in a situation where the positive case and everyone that was close to that positive case had a mask on, everybody was correctly and consistently wearing a mask, then only the positive case went home. Those are the three areas, other than if you weren't in close contact with the positive case. But in discussion, yes, most of the concern was, as one gentleman mentioned, the ratio of sending kids that don't appear to have, you know, be sick and be perfectly healthy, following the protocol. It does, if you follow it strictly, I mean, our nurses do an excellent job, and our teachers certainly have been team players in doing seating charts since, you know, we made the adjustment and other types of information. So, but there is in a classroom 6 feet, you know, it covers a lot of area in a classroom. So right now, if you have one person that does not have a mask within that contact trace area, then with that positive case, everybody is subject to quarantine based on the strict guidelines of the Tennessee Department of Health, even if they have a mask on, other than the other exemptions.
With the option 1 and 2, either vaccinated or having positive in the last 90 days, do they have to have a mask on or no?
Well, I mean, according to the policy, yes, but to avoid quarantine, they're an exception.
Can I clarify just one thing? With them wearing a mask, what the previous TDH guidelines did state was that for the, to not be excluded, that the case had to have a mask on and also the exposure. So let's just say if there were 6 exposures, if 5 of the exposures had a mask on, the case had a mask on, those 5 would not have to be excluded. But the one person who didn't wear a mask would have to be excluded. And it did just state that it was for the students. As of last Friday, a new recommendation came out to where it also covers the adults in the schools, the teachers and the staff, where previously it didn't.
Yeah, and the mask keeps everyone in place if they're not positive or symptoms.
So we're saying,
Well, the other it would be a variance from the Tennessee Department of Health's protocol, return to school protocol, but if you just focus on everyone wearing a mask.
Yeah, I think if they wear a mask, they don't have symptoms and they need to be in school.
I think the kids that don't wear a mask and don't have no symptoms needs to be in school.
Well, yeah.
Okay, they ain't got no mask on, and they're sitting in the classroom, and they're not sick, and they're, 5 days,
Or
they're opt out.
If they are sick and they don't have a mask on.
If they're sick, they're gonna stay home anyway.
Well, we hope. We hope.
Well, you'd hope.
It's not always.
I just think we gotta get a handle of this quarantine deal, because we're at what, 1,600 and 200 actual cases?
We were when we closed on.
That's where we got in trouble last
I
year. We
agree.
can't do that. I mean, that just, because we've all heard and we all know that in-person learning, there's no substitute for it. So whatever we gotta do to keep them in, I'm in favor of changing whatever policy to compromise to, I still think we ought to wear a mask in school.
Well, there's no way you can social distance in school.
Not possible.
The mask is a layer of protection, and, not everybody wants to wear one, but if you want to stay in school and not get back into the virtual learning, that's a small price to pay, I think. I mean, I don't like masks either. I don't think anybody does, but we're not all in our environment 3 feet apart all day long with everybody. So that's something we could do to keep our kids in school and keep the numbers down. I think that'd be a good thing.
And if it becomes a bigger problem,
We can always
we meet
revisit.
again.
We can always revisit it, maybe even set a time, positive thing, that we come back and revisit this.
I've got a question for Ms. Wagner on the quarantine. It's not going to help us with our under 12 and under kids, but on the vaccination, if in Mr. Boyd's example a minute ago, if that, or in yours where that the person that had the case, okay, or ended up testing positive, wasn't wearing a mask, and there's kids sitting around them that are wearing a mask, all of those folks go home or quarantine unless the ones with the mask are vaccinated.
If you're vaccinated, it doesn't matter if you have a mask on or not.
Doesn't matter.
So it doesn't matter if the case has a mask on or not. If you're vaccinated, if you are without symptoms, then you do not have to be excluded from school.
Right, you're right. You're not quarantined.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So there is value to being vaccinated.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I like your motion.
You like my motion?
Yep.
I didn't really make it a motion.
Well, you made a suggestion, I like it.
What is it? We'll put it in the motion, Mary Pat.
No, I don't remember it, but I liked it.
I think if they have on a mask, despite what the other person does, if they have on a mask with no symptoms, they come to school until they have symptoms.
And can't get quarantined unless they do have symptoms.
Unless they have
Right.
symptoms.
Yeah. Wouldn't that
I think
help
you would
quite a
have
bit of wouldn't that help their numbers?
And our staff too,
Tremendously.
right?
Well, we believe so. I mean,
And if it becomes a problem, we revisit it.
Because air quarantines, in looking at other systems, air quarantines were quite a bit more, weren't they? I mean,
well, we're one of the few, I mean, not everybody posted their actual
so
quarantine
that was
numbers.
it.
Most people posted just their positive cases.
okay.
Before we second that motion, what about staff? You just said students. Did you mean staff
And
as well?
staff on it, staff as well.
Second, ma'am. So if you're wearing a mask, you will not get quarantined unless you do have symptoms.
So are we having symptom checks? Will we be having those kids who have come in close contact see the nurse every morning for temperature checks and things like that?
We're not currently requiring those checks. And we do rely on parents to monitor for symptoms.
Now, my question with my own motion is, because nobody else asked it, thinking it through, so what about the kids or staff that didn't wear a mask? To Mr. Irvin's point.
You're gonna send them home?
Well, if, you know,
Well, it
without a
does.
mask, if they're not vaccinated, I mean, then they're really not subject to an exemption to quarantine.
So hypothetical, if you do not wear a mask, and I have on a mask, and you get COVID, I do not have to quarantine until I have
The other
symptoms.
one does.
But if Keith over here don't have on a mask, and you get COVID, he's got to quarantine. That's what I meant. Okay, good. All right, let's vote. No more questions.
Question. So you're
Well,
suggesting, what?
Well, it's,
Voting's open.
I know, questions for all of you, but it's why people are here to ask questions.
yeah, but according to board policy, you got to get on the agenda to come and speak to the board.
Don't too late, sorry. Well, I do have a question. So you're planning on quarantining kids who aren't sick. If someone next to them got sick. Right?
That's currently what is happening with the Tennessee Department of Health protocol.
Jennifer, change my vote.
It takes a few days to incubate. The virus takes a few days to incubate, so the exposure and being sick would run dramatic exponentially up if you weren't quarantined contacts. I mean, if we were all waiting for us all to get the sniffles and, you know.
You're gonna send kids home
it just
that's
gets- I mean, it
not
gets-
sick.
I read that, right? That's what confused.
Dangerous if you wait until symptoms are exhibited, I think, if there's a potential exposure. But, I mean, but I like where we're going.
How long is
Get
our mask
vaccinated.
mandate good for?
Well, you all voted to revisit it on the next workshop. Okay.
Mr. Meredith.
Which is 21st.
Completion
Waiting on
revision.
vote. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
I apologize. I didn't think it's fair to, everybody else has to put in prior and get on the agenda, so I didn't think it'd be proper to just let anybody speak. I didn't want to be rude, but,
Just one quick question.
yeah,
It carries, Irvin voting no.
okay.
I had another question, if we're still talking about COVID. This is not are we currently offering any incentives to our employees for getting vaccinated?
We currently are not offering any incentives, no ma'am. Some districts are, it ranges, but what I've seen from superintendents, if they do that, it's been a dollar amount, like $25 or a gift card. That's what I've seen mostly in the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're moving on. Good on COVID?
If the board is, yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir. 3.0.
Yeah, just update with mentioning the HUE committee. We still have not heard of any final confirmation of approval, but as I shared already, when we did receive a request to clarify or update, it was very minor, and actually one of the requests was not necessary because we did provide them with what we were asked to do. So that's why I say we anticipate approval soon. It's just the timeline we don't know.
Okay. Any questions?
I think you already, unless you have any questions, I think I've already shared the HUE committee outcome today at 1 o'clock. And remove that item. The board voted to remove that item for later. Just the Jonesboro School Building Project, item 10F. Don't have any updates, have not received any updates unless board members have.
Don't have anything?
I think big thing now is we're waiting on pricing. That's the whole up.
Next Friday, is that right, or tomorrow? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the specific day, it's hard date.
I just have, I know you took that other off the agenda, but the documents that were sent to us are in Google Docs. And even before now, I kept sending a request and it keeps saying I'm denied.
Okay. We will make sure that's
Trying to tell you something, Mr. Buchanan.
done differently.
You can do the same thing.
That can be corrected with a setting.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Tcap date, just, that is continuing. It's just at the state level as far as finalizing. Mr. Blevins did walk the site and the property last week, but we're waiting on an opportunity to do a media event for the official signing of the agreement. And when that's set, or when there's some dates, because I believe there'll be several people that will be involved, I will certainly share it with the board. Yes, sir.
And we've not heard anything from Boones Creek Middle School, correct? I was
No, not anything other than what Mr. Bennett, I think, provided.
I was just hoping we would have seen something here in place. Good.
I think the interest is gone. Tcap.
Yeah, just, we wanted to formally review, and Ms. Hayes has prepared a summary, and I just asked if she'd come up and provide that overview and summary of the 2021 Tcap results for Washington County schools in the areas that we have there.
Thank you. Proficiency. You will see that word throughout all the detailed data that you have and our executive summary. But what does proficiency mean? Proficiency in the state of Tennessee is the goal for our students to score in the proficiency level. And what that means on grade level, that test that they took that year, that we want that student to be on track on the grade level or mastery. That is proficiency in the state of Tennessee. But something that I encourage you to keep in mind about proficiency. Proficiency took on a whole new meaning last year. Some days proficiency might have just meant that child could access internet and get on Google Meets for that day or for that week. Proficiency meant that that teacher was successful in getting that child to show his or her face and get them engaged during a Google Meet. So as we look at our data, we got to look for celebrations, and we have to remember this is what we refer to as lag data. That's like looking into the rear view mirror and seeing what's happened behind you and what's gone. But it also means you look at it quickly, learn what you can from it, and move forward. And that's why we encouraged our students last year to take the Tcap test. The first celebration is we had 98% average in all the subject areas of our students taking Tcap with the EOCs. What's even more amazing is that we had over 500 that was fully remote the entire year. Those students came into the building and did quite well for being remote all year. So when you go through the data, that is one celebration that we can be proud of. We're not looking for them to, hey, we had 98% or we want to make sure they mastered or on track. This kind of gives us a little glimpse of what life was like for them last year during their instruction. That happened in many various ways in different forms. It gives us a starting point, but there's so much other data and information from our teachers and school leaders that we put in place. But the great thing is we can take this, learn from last year, because this isn't over. But we take the positives and the information and move forward. The second celebration that you will notice when you look through this data is the Tcap gives us 11 data points. That's 11 courses or subjects. 4 in elementary, math, ELA, science and social studies. Then 7 high school courses, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, English 1, English 2, U.S. History, and Biology. And out of all those 11, all students, on an average, scored above the state proficiency level except for 2. That's to celebrate. And we will notice that the two that we were right there with the state, really less than 4% difference, was math in the elementary and algebra 2 in the high school. We're pretty much on track with what research was indicating last year in the state of Tennessee and nationally, that we were going to see a decline in our math scores. That's the second celebration I want you to think about. And the third one, I find this one particularly interesting. Of those 11 data points, they also break it down in numerous subgroups. So in Washington County, in the elementary and high school, we'll start with elementary, our economically disadvantaged students and our students with disabilities scored above the state average. In high school, all courses, our economically disadvantaged students scored above state average. That says a lot for our RTI program, any type of intervention resources, our SPED program, and even a lot to our teachers and school leaders for reaching out to those students and providing them with the resources they need. So when you look through all the detailed reports through this data, I want you to keep that in mind. As we move forward, we have learned, and we started work back in summer school. Summer school was our first step to help recover some of these gaps that we're seeing. This is just a quick overview. And we've got a little block there. And I'm not going to read this. I'm just going to show you what it is. Remember that word proficiency. That's how we're comparing with the state. You'll see it's broke down to 4 elementary subjects. It gives the state proficiency level, the district, and the difference. Just like I said earlier, we're above the state in elementary in all areas except math, and just a difference of 2.5%. I broke down by grade level just to give you an idea, because I know some of us really like to dig into it, but there's even more data in that huge report that you have. And again, I'm not going to read it, but you'll see that we still struggle a little bit with the 4th grade. In ELA, 3rd grade, that is our vision. When a child scores below, that is an indicator that they will not be a efficient reader, and we need to really focus on that. And we're already working on K2 programs with grant funding to help support that learning as they move towards 3rd grade. And as you continue with this brief chart, it just kind of tells you some takeaways for 3rd grade compared to the state, and that yes, we were below, but you know what, these are the students I just mentioned that typically are not able to read proficiency. And I've also listed some of the things that we're being proactive about. So one thing about data, you can have the best data reports around and they look great, but if you don't do anything with it or learn from it, it's useless. As a district, I've listed the summer camps, the Tennessee Literacy Success Act, and Reading Force 360 programs, that should be 360, that are in place. It started back in the summer. We're looking at 10 off-core tutoring. Right now, we have additional interventionists in the school supporting our schools, and we also are using a tutoring program with NICE funding. So we are already being proactive. And then we continue with the math, and you will see a couple more by grade level with the blow, and just like I mentioned earlier, this shouldn't be a surprise. As you continue to go through, it just kind of gives you a breakdown, what are we doing to be proactive in math. We moved some of our instructional coaches to be math interventionists at the schools. We predicted this need, and the data shows it. So we're looking forward to seeing how this plays out throughout the year. Then the same charts for high school courses. So you just kind of take this and also compare the very lengthy data report. It gives you comparisons to the state and also a trend over the past, some areas the past 4 or 5 years. But again, like I said, remember what proficiency means for us and how we take this data and learn from the past. Graduation rate this school year 20, 96.7%. Remember, this is a year behind. Sometimes that's hard to kind of focus, like, oh, that was just last year. It takes a while to get all the information and data in. And then chronic absenteeism, this is last year. We had, according to our absenteeism rate, we did great having our students show up for class. Do you have any questions?
I just want to say, Chairman, if I can.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, you know, last year was very challenging, I think, for everybody in this room, no matter what your job was last year, it was very challenging. Even though we set high marks for ourselves and for our systems, and their teachers set high marks for their students, I think we've done a phenomenal job for what we were handling. And, you know, with 96.7% graduation rate in 19 and 20, you know, we still feel for those 3.3 kids that didn't graduate percentage. But that's awful something to be proud of. I just want everybody in our system, parents, children, students, teachers, staff, janitors, everybody to be very, very proud of what we handled last year. We done it very proud of, so very proud of you all.
Well said. Anybody else? Yes.
Well, right there it shows that our kids need to be in school, because that's terrible. Okay, we have really, I mean, it shows. That's my opinion. We done the best job we could do, or they've done the best job they could do with what they handed. I understand everything what you said, and I agree 100%. But if we don't get our kids back in school, you know.
Everybody wants them to be in school. I mean, that's their number one goal. I agree.
You know, and there's definitely, I mean, it's certainly commendable the hard work that our teachers did, and the support of the families, and then don't forget the students trying to struggle through last year. But you know, those data certainly show a lot of hard work in front of us, a lot of challenges and a lot of work. You know, it's going to be multiple years to get some of our students back to a good foundation. But I know our teachers and the support of families and the hard work of students will get there. But you know, even though we were at or above the state proficiency levels in most of the areas, I mean, we have a lot of work to do. A lot of, you know, that's why we want to implement some of the very focused tutoring during the day, and additional time to learn after school for families that want to participate. And then also, as we all want, and you know, as Mr. Urban pointed out, yeah, they need to be in person to have that direct contact with our qualified teachers and everyone that supports our teachers, and that's you know, supporting students in the classroom. So we certainly can hold our heads high as a school system, but we also need to buckle down, because there's a lot of work ahead of us.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Policy.
Yes, sir. It's the review of two policies. One is policy that was utilized today, the 1.609 appeals and appearances before the board. Just to review this policy in light of some recent discussions about, you know, it's a limited public forum, but also open and accessible to the public, and what parameters boards have in managing that space. Your current policy that's been in effect, I mean, I don't believe there's anything that's directly concerning about it, but you may want to consider the timing, or you can keep the policy as it is. I don't believe there was any changes proposed that was different than what the board had previously been using. I think some districts had some concerns and they had to change the policy.
I would like to see us change it to 3 minutes, and also where our meetings are on Thursdays, as long as they put in it by Tuesday, 2 days prior to the meeting, because a lot of times somebody has something to share that may have happened right up to that point. And I think 2 days prior to our meeting and just 3 minutes of time, I'd like to make those 2 changes if you don't have a problem with that, Mr. Boyd.
No, sir. I mean, it's the board's decision.
My question is Jennifer has to send the agenda out. Is the time frame 2 days before going to get in the way of her getting that out on time?
It has to be posted 5 days, don't it?
Yeah, but the way Mr. Bennett was talking about, you can, or what we're talking about has to be on the agenda
Exactly.
5 days prior. But somebody has a comment, I mean, we don't need to act just because somebody comes up here and says anything. I don't think we should ever just act in haste, that same night. But we ought to hear that person's, thought process.
As long as it's on the agenda?
Yes.
So currently in your timeline within the current policy, an individual has to sign up 5 days prior, and we don't release the agenda until that same timeline. So they really could not see and review the agenda in that timeline. So changing the timeline to allow the release of the agenda and allow a citizen to see an agenda item and then have time to say, I want to speak on this, or I want to make public comment to the board on that item. They will have a chance to review the agenda with that timeline that's being proposed.
Okay.
It can be added that night,
And just as long as we have addressing the board on there, it doesn't matter who is addressing, correct? Is that?
In this case, if there's no request by the end of the business day on Tuesday prior to the Thursday meeting, it just wouldn't, it would be an item that would not be.
All right, so to do that.
Can I make a motion?
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Somebody else have something? Let me ask before you make a motion. So to do that, we had this on first reading.
Well, it's just review.
It was a review.
So you want to amend and?
I ain't even made it yet, but I'd like to make it that they have to end of business day on Tuesday to address the board. They have amend our policy for 3 minutes and approve this on second and final.
You may want to change
Can we
that
clear-
from Tuesday, because a lot of times we move our meetings to a Tuesday.
Well, it has to
It
be.
would be 48 hours prior to the meeting.
Rather than day, I put hours or
Yes, sir.
for timelines.
That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the comment, the public comment is specific to things on that agenda.
Yes, I did adjust that from the.
So the motion is
48 hours.
48 hours prior to a meeting that a citizen can request to address the board the night of the meeting on a topic on the agenda.
3 minutes.
For 3 minutes. You get that, Jennifer? Good. Any more discussion?
And that was to waive first and pass on second?
Yeah.
Second and final, please.
And it used to be that the chairman and the director had to go over whoever wanted to address the board. And you had the option to say, no, you were not going to address the board. So now you're giving that up, right?
Well, is it still
It's still in there.
It's still in there.
I didn't adjust that.
But
all we're adjusting
in
is the
2 minutes,
timeline.
2 days, he's gonna know to kick it out or not? Let him.
Yeah. Yeah, Jennifer.
Or the chairman?
They'll say the same, we're just giving them extra time to be put on it, and they're only 3 minutes.
Voting them.
I'm reading it. Reading.
This first
It
one.
carries.
All right, we got one more, Mr. Gordon.
Yes, sir. The one is just updating our, this is first reading and to pass on the second, or waive the first reading and pass on the second final reading. This just allows the option if we do get a waiver, our policies would better align with the State Department's waiver process if we were to go to remote for a classroom, a cluster of classrooms, or an entire school based on the number of quarantines or cases.
I'll make a motion that we waive first reading on 4.212 and pass on second and final reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Being none, let's vote.
Voting's open.
Is that on policy?
It's all in policy.
All carried.
All right, so the two items that we added back to the agenda tonight were South Central gym floor replacement.
So we'd be responsible for what the insurance, the gap, and the, can't remember what that figure was.
The gap was a little over $11,000 from the amount that was, reclaimed from insurance.
Will that
for
go,
the total cost?
will that come out of our maintenance budget?
Yes.
Make a motion, we approve this bid to fix South Central gym floor and pay the difference in what the insurance and the bid was for.
Second.
Second, any discussion?
I just have a question. Would that pricing be consistent with our previous gym floor replacement?
I believe so. Square footage and the type of work that was done. Yes.
Thank you.
And very reputable, this is also southeast region, reputable gym floor.
And Mr. Patrick's done some extra grade work.
Yes, there's been some additional drainage, because there's, where that's located, of course, you all are aware of that hill, there's a lot of water that comes down, but there is additional drainage that's been put in. But I don't know if there's a large flood coming across that hill that it would take care of that, but there has been additional mitigation.
Well, we may need to look at that later on.
Yeah, this is like the third time we've
Yeah.
had to replace that floor since
We-
2014.
We may need to build like a wall or something in front of that wall.
That's a possibility, yes, sir.
All right. Nobody else? Vote.
It's open.
And next was Lexi Learning Systems Digital Resources for Westview and Grandview.
Yes, this is late.
There. Go ahead.
Just for, this came in late. There's a misunderstanding. This is through grant funds, and they were under the impression because it's grant funds, they could just purchase. But we redirected them to remind them if it's over a certain amount, no matter the source of funds, it still has to be board approved. And we do have for the comptroller's records are, to support, it has a sole source provider letter to support purchase without a competitive bid.
I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Who's the grantor?
Nischwanger.
And it's for what schools? Westview
Westview and Grandview.
and Grandview.
Anybody else? Well, let's vote.
Voting's open.
All
All
right. Okay. Next on the agenda is WCEA representative.
Just coming up. Both. One.
We're here, sorry.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Both of us come. Just come on.
Come on, Daniel, take your shot.
Come on. He needs you.
Good afternoon, members of the board. You're good. Last time I was here, I was in my MC Hammer outfit, if you remember that, when we had firearms night. But good afternoon for those of you that don't know me. I'm Ben Davenport, and I'm your WCEA representative this evening. First of all, you saw on your agenda we have the MOU that is up for review. We thank you for taking a look at that and approving the new MOU moving forward. Your collaborative conferencing team has been hard at work these past several months in revising this document to continue serving the best interests of all of the professional employees in Washington County Schools. And as we all know, in part of our mission statement, as Mr. Boyd has made clear, together working collaboratively increases the effectiveness and progress in the process. And we look forward to continue working together alongside each other in the future. And also, in accordance with some of the things on tonight's agenda, WCGA would also like to highly recommend the board for approving those COVID support days that we talked about earlier for teachers as we continue to work through, of course, the pandemic and facilitate the highest level of learning that we possibly can for all of our students in Washington County. So I know they would look forward to having that in the near future. Thank you all. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Boyd, any dates we need to go over before we adjourn?
Do we need a motion to approve that or not?
It was in the consent agenda. You approved the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's the school visit dates right there, copies for everybody.
Right. Explain.
Can I respectfully ask that the 21st meeting be moved to the 20th or 22nd, please? Because I will not be available for the
I would ask to
21st.
move it to the 22nd. I probably won't be available on the 20th.
22nd. Does anybody have a problem with that? Anything to help a fellow board member?
Chaz.
Oh, how would you
Chad
like
Wood.
that, Chad?
Can you move it back to Monday?
Need one more if you got it.
We'll move to the 22nd, I think, right?
So Wednesday night?
Wednesday.
So Wednesday.
Please.
I hope it's important.
Don't make me beg.
20.
I'm going to
I just won't be available. I mean, if it's best for everybody to leave it to 21st, that's fine, but I would hate to miss it myself.
No, wait a minute. You mean the 23rd?
It's our workshop.
21st.
The workshop
And
is
we're
the
moving
20th.
22nd.
Oh. You won't be available the 20th either?
Mr. Riddle.
You won't?
If we could move it beyond the 21st.
Well, let's go. Y'all want to go 23rd? Is that all right for everybody? Thursday. Is that okay?
Thursday would be great.
Thursday work a few minutes.
I don't know if I'm flying back in Seattle that day, so I don't know if I'm gone. If y'all make it, I think my flight gets in at 11 p.m.
We want you to be here, but we gotta have Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's go with the 23rd. That's good for most.
5.
5 o'clock.
Will we have a call meeting for the mandate? If we do, it'd be 4:30, I guess, right?
Yes.
If we do.
If we do.
If we do.
We'll let you know.
Thank you.
All right. All hearts, minds
Hey,
clear.
on our visits, are we traveling together or are we leaving now?
About to go down.
Whatever the board would prefer, I can certainly be chauffeur if I need to
I
be.
mean, it don't matter to me, I just was curious.
It's what's most convenient for board members, if some want to meet here and drive
We can
together.
talk about it on the 23rd.
But whatever the option that the board prefers.
We can talk about it, the October meeting. When is the October meeting first?
September 30th.
It's the last
September
Thursday of
30th.
September because the next week is fall break for the school system.
So it's the 30th.
So the question was to be able to take the van to the school
I just
visit.
was curious if we're gonna ride the van, if we're going.
I'd like to for some of them, yeah,
All right.
if we can. We can talk about it.
We'll make that an option, and if
Thank
anyone
you.
needs to take advantage of it.
There's a detailed schedule in
I'll have to
BOE
find somebody to drive me.
with specific times for each school. Thank you.
Thanks, here we go.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Meeting adjourned. Football time.